forum today a little bit in context. Trying to particularly point to two things. First is a sense that climate change has now become a climate crisis, and I think that is the language we really need to start using. And have been so struck by what we've been seeing. Sharp increases in global warming, forest fires all across the world, increases in the number and intensity of storms, sharp reductions of ice in the Arctic, Antarctic, and Greenland, sharp increases in sea temperatures. As someone who used to live in Florida, I was stunned by hearing about 100-degree temperatures in the ocean off Florida. For a lot of us, I think, for a lot of people, maybe not here but elsewhere, it causes a feeling of despair. Like, this is a problem so huge, how do we even begin to address it? It seems to require scales of action that are well beyond anything we can do. But what I want to come back with is to say, actually, I think there's a lot of room for hope. And the hope lies in several things. There is increasing national and international attention to the issue, notably the UN summit in September on the very topic of global warming is really striking. The massive march that ended fossil fuels in New York City only a few weeks ago that brought a lot of us there, that were struck by how many people showed up. Massive resources are now beginning to flow into dealing with climate change, and it's really important to keep in mind that, for example, the Inflation Reduction Act is moving huge investments into subsidies for electric vehicles, batteries, solar power, wind energy, hydrogen research. And these subsidies are not just industry, but to individuals as well. And that's one of the things that our panel is going to be talking about. So that's really something we've got to emphasize. That's important. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, which sort of seems like an afterthought, turns out to be very important because it's putting huge amounts of money into electric vehicle charging stations, into improving the power grid. So that is something we have to think about. And finally, we're seeing massive shifts in private investment into new areas, new electric vehicle plants, new battery plants. So things are occurring. And the final source of hope that I want to talk about, and this is the reason for this panel, is that there's much that we can do at the household and community level to address climate change. So our speakers today are going to be addressing that. And I think that's something we really have to get out to people, that even if people are feeling that they cannot operate at the state or national or international level, there's much that they can do that is very effective at the level of their households and in their community. And we need to get that word out. So what our panel is going to be doing is our speakers, and I've asked them to speak only 5 minutes apiece. So please look at them with a beady eye if they go beyond that. We're asking them, I'll sort of introduce them as we go. So Melanie McDermott, who is a senior researcher at Sustainable Jersey, will be talking about electric vehicles. Beryl Koblin, who is on the steering committee of Indivisible Central Jersey, and Indivisible Central Jersey is a co-sponsor of this event, will be talking about solar panels. And in both cases, they're talking about their own recent experiences with these things and what they've run into, so that they're giving us, not just the high-level analysis, but the nitty-gritty. Randy Solomon, who is the executive director of Sustainable Jersey, will be talking about community solar. And we have several other people here who've had that experience as well. Tina Weishaus, who's the chair of Sustainable Highland Park, will be talking about heat pumps, in particular the new heating and air conditioning system that they've installed. Tina will also then switch hats imperceptibly and become also our speaker on local resilience efforts. Randy will come back to talk about getting local governments and businesses to decarbonize. And finally, we'll have Charlie Kratovil of Food and Water Watch, who will be talking about the imperative necessity of stopping new fossil fuel projects. He'll be talking about the Woodbridge gas plant. After our speakers have spoken, each 5 minutes apiece, giving us a kind of a broad understanding of each topic, we then want to go into breakout groups. So we have breakout groups for each of these topics, and you'll see little signs on these tables. Please go to a table that has a topic that interests you. These speakers will be chairing those discussions and getting into the nitty-gritty with you. We'll do that for 15 minutes and then turn around and have a second stage where you can switch and go into another group. So found this topic interesting, but another one interests you as well, you can switch groups and go over there. So we'll do that, and then we'll come back just for brief reports from each of the groups. So I'll be asking the speakers if you could keep track of the discussion in groups and what were the salient issues that came out. Make them very brief. I'm asking you, as ridiculous as it sounds, 3 minutes apiece. Just quick and to the point. We'll have some Q&A coming from you folks here, addressed to anybody that you want to, and then a brief conclusion. And in the conclusion, I want to give thanks to a lot of people that helped us pull this off. So I'm now going to turn it over to Melanie. I realize I need to pass on some advice that Mickey Diener, who is in front keeping track of things for us, and videotaping this, and I should point out what's going to happen. We're going to be videotaping the plenary discussion, and then when we come back, the reports from the various groups and the Q&A, we're going to be putting this out on YouTube and then making it publicly available so that anybody that you knew who wanted to be here and maybe couldn't for this day or has a physical disability and couldn't come, please let them know that they'll be able to see much of what we talked about today. And we'll also be making available various handouts that we'll be giving out at the tables. Okay? So the thing that Mickey asked me to do, and I perhaps failed to do it, is to speak loud enough. So, Melanie, please do much better than I did. So let me turn it over to Melanie.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks so much for organizing this, and thanks to everyone for coming out tonight. It's very affirming to just be with like-minded folks trying to do what we can. Can I ask how many people in the audience already own an EV? Okay, good. So there's something to learn from me because I've owned an EV for about 3 weeks now. And if I can do it, you can do it too, because I don't really like cars. And I'm a late adopter, but we did it. So Kevin asked us to address why. I mean, the larger picture for why is obvious to everybody here, why we need to do everything we can to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Transportation is the single largest sector of greenhouse gas emissions in New Jersey, accounting for about 37%. So if we are going to meet our greenhouse gas reduction goals as a state, we absolutely have to tackle the transportation sector, and we have to electrify the entire sector. I will kind of undermine my own I will underscore my own presentation by saying that owning an EV does not get us home free. It's only as green as the electricity grid is, so we need to green the grid. In other words, the sources of electric power need to be renewable. And public transportation, walking and biking is better than driving a car anywhere. So with that said, it's still something you can do, and the costs are really coming down. So probably your best deal out there in a new EV would be a Chevy Bolt, both because it's a low-cost vehicle. So we looked up manufacturers say MSRP, the manufacturer's retail price, suggested retail price, $27,500. And there are all of these rebates, which I can talk to you more about. We have a handout about from the federal government and from the state that can bring the cost down by as much as $10,000 or $12,000, depending on various factors. Very affordable. Also, more used EVs are becoming available on the market. The prices aren't particularly low, but I believe that you can get a $2,000 subsidy off the price, and all zero-emission vehicles purchased in the state of New Jersey have no sales tax. So that's a significant savings. And I also want to say a bunch of these subsidies might evaporate, particularly the state, when there's a certain amount of funds and then they get spent down. In fact, the state subsidy has come and gone already once. There's a certain amount in the kitty, and then when it's exhausted, they may or may not replenish it. So that's another reason to get while the getting is good. I think the other reason, and this kind of was inspiring to my husband David and me, was just to be an early adopter. We're not early. Andy was early. I've been commuting in an EV for several years now. That's how you build the market and build confidence in your neighbors and stuff like that. So we purchased a Hyundai Ioniq 5 which the full price was $52,000, quite a bit more. What did we get for that much more money? Well, for one thing, it was readily available because the Chevy Bolt receives the greatest subsidies because it's U.S. made and the federal subsidies are maxed out there. But we did get about $7,500 of subsidies off of that. Some of them just came from the dealer. The dealer just wanted to match or nearly match what the other car makers were getting. And it also has a faster charging time, a longer range. We got an all-wheel drive, which we thought was a safety consideration, so we did lose some range there. And it's a bigger vehicle with more cargo space, and we really like doing road trips, like camping and bikes and things like that, so that we did want that bigger vehicle. It also has, and we can nerd out on this in our breakout group, it also has vehicle-to-load capabilities where you can actually plug in appliances and be a resilient home for the next Sandy for a while by running electricity directly from your car down. The sky's the limit if you want to get a Tesla or if you want to see fancy, expensive EVs and really like fast cars. They have very impressive acceleration, and we have them at car fairs all the time, including we have them here in Highland Park. Plug-in hybrids are an option. Then they still get most of the subsidies. You're only going to get about a 75-mile range, and you can only charge them, I'm pretty sure you can only charge them at the lowest charging rate of about 3 to 4 miles per hour. So if you have a short commute, that could be a good solution. And then if you have major range anxiety about road trips, you have the gas-fired engine there if you need it. But I personally wouldn't go out and buy a plug-in hybrid now, and certainly not if your main objective is to do something for the climate, but it's an option. So issues. Range is an issue. It is not really an issue for most uses, getting to and from work, grocery store uses. It's a road trip issue, and it can be planned around. Our Ioniq says that all-wheel drive, that brought it down, as I said, it says it gets 265 miles off of a full charge, but my husband, who loves playing with these things, finds that if you drive conservatively 50 to 60 miles per hour, you can get that range off of, instead of a full charge, an 80% charge. And that's another point, that your driving behavior does matter. So driving moderately and really does make you get further, and that range will go down not only if you drive fast, but when the weather's cold. So we'll have to see what that looks like. So other range issues. For me, I don't enjoy this sort of learning curve. It might be really fun for some folks. There are different apps for all these different public chargers. The car is like a computer, so you can learn all the menus and things like that. Charging for daily use, if you want to plug it into your normal 120 volt outlet, which is called a level 1 charger, you get about 3 to 4 miles per hour. And that's actually probably okay for overnight charging if you have like a 25-mile commute. And certainly if you have access to a workplace charger. I think that, and there are subsidies which we can talk about in the breakouts for getting chargers installed. Now would be the time to do that. I think, my husband and I are disagreeing about this, but I think that convenience matters a lot. Highland Park does have a public charger. So terminology, level 2 charger means basically a 240 volt outlet, so kind of like you run your dryer off of. And that increases your speed quite a bit. So if you just have a 240 volt outlet with nothing fancy, no charging device attached to it, you're already improving your charge rates. And level 2 chargers vary greatly in how fast they charge. The one here at Highland Park behind Beryl Hall is really slow. No, it's 240. It's technically a level 2, but it's just slow as molasses. We've been testing it, but am I running out of time? Okay, so level 3 chargers are those DC chargers, and the nearest one is in East Brunswick. So you do need to do a little more planning, but as I said, in regular use, you shouldn't be able to be constrained too much. I did want to say, if you don't own or live in a single-family home, we should be pushing, and Randy can speak to this later, Highland Park and your employers to do more to install workplace and public chargers. They should be zoned for this. So when we have our redevelopment, it'll be interesting to see if our developer is required to put in a certain number of EV chargers. And there are incentives for those things as well. If the last time you looked at an EV was a few years ago, look again. The technology is improving rapidly. Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks everybody for coming out, and thank you, Kevin. Okay, is that better? Yes, okay. And thank you, Melanie, for raising what your source of your electricity is. In terms of solar panels, that's really about the source of the electricity. And you know, your choice, besides having solar panels, is who is your electric supplier. And PSE&G is not green. So we've been getting our electricity prior to getting the solar panels from Clean Choice, which is green. So in getting solar panels, I mean, I can only talk from our personal experience. Just be prepared for a longish process and decisions that need to be made along the way. You know, first it's how many bids do you go out and get, and with whom? We ended up going with a company that was a referral from a good friend who had a good experience. And I tend to, my husband and I tend to kind of value that referral experience rather than getting 10 more bids. But people have different ways of approaching it, and it's probably a good thing when you get several bids. And you may have noticed that oftentimes there are solar companies that are knocking on doors these days and trying to sell their products. And that would probably be the last company I would go with, but that's my own. Another decision point is buying versus leasing. You can lease solar panels. In particular, it's a good option if you don't have the cash reserves to do the upfront investment, and you don't have the maintenance costs because they're owned by the company. There's a monthly cost, but you don't get the federal and state credits and reimbursements. If you have to own them in order to get them. So, you know, buying them is a high cost up front. You can do, some of the companies do have payment plans, and you get, at this point, the federal tax credit is 30%, which is substantial. And there's other, I can go into some of the New Jersey also. Another decision point is whether you want a battery or not. They are expensive, but they're good for power outages and when it's dark. So, you know, one of the first things they'll do is they'll come out and survey your house and the trees and the way that your roof is, the angle of your roof. They'll look at your roof and see what kind of condition it's in, and come up with a plan, first of all, to see if it's feasible, and then propose a plan if it is feasible. The system is limited to what you use on average. So what you can't do is put up a solar farm in your yard or on your house. So basically, they look to see how much energy you use during the year on average, and they build a system to cover that. You know, there's the installation, the inspections, and then the inspections, and then the inspections. And then there's the installation of your net meter from PSE&G. And then you wait until they connect you. So it took about 4 to 5 months to get the system up and actually online. So what is net metering? With a solar system, you're both the buyer and the supplier, and the net meter has 2 registers on it. One that's measuring what you're using from the grid, and the other is measuring what you provide back to the grid. And on your PSE&G bill, you get those numbers of what you've sent back and what you've drawn. And you know, if you are producing more than you're using, then your bill that month is $4.95, which is basically their PSE&G's connection fee. And at the end of the year, they calculate if you have any credits that are accumulated, and they pay you the wholesale price for whatever is left over at the end of the year. What's important to remember is that PSE&G only sees what you send back to them and what you draw from them. What they don't see is how much you're actually producing. Because when you're producing it, you're using electricity during the daytime. It just goes from the solar panels and that's it. So we have a little app that was included that tells you how much, how many megawatts, how many kilowatt hours, how many megawatts you're producing. And so far, since our system went online in March, we're about 6 megawatts at this point. So as I mentioned, there are federal tax credits. It's 30% right now. There's all kinds of things that are going to go up and down over the years, but it's going to last until 2034. Under New Jersey, you get credit for every megawatt hour that you produced. And that's produced, that's not net. And at this point, you get $90 for each megawatt. So, and that lasts for 15 years. So that can be about close to $10,000. I will, at the table, show you the process that you have to go through to get New Jersey to pay you that money.
Oh,
It was phone calls and a lot of emails. And then we discovered, which we actually didn't know when we launched into this, Clean Choice Energy, who is our source of electricity when we're drawing from the grid, gives us a quarterly check based on how much excess kilowatt hours are generated. And they give it to us, that money, at the market value. So right now we're paying 20 cents per kilowatt hour. Whatever we generate in excess, they pay us back at that price. So that's a nice little check to get once a quarter. So I think that's it for now. We can go over more details when we meet at the table.
Hi, everyone, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Yeah. Better? Okay. Again, my name is Randy Solomon, and like everybody else, I'm really grateful that you're all here. This is so important, and it's really hard to stay focused on something that the problem never stops. So we have to just keep coming at it. So here we are again, all coming at it again. I'm going to talk about community solar, and so we're hearing sort of successfully specific things that we all probably should have done already, but still could do to address the climate crisis. Just a couple of things that it's great to be able to sit back and listen to others and pick up things that you might have missed. So I'm just going to add a couple of things. One thing for you could also get up to $1,750 for if you get an EV for installation of a level 2 charger, as well as paying for the cost of the wiring, sort of the make-ready cost. Just so that's another thing to consider. They'll help you rewire your house. And then if you want an easy way to get bids for solar is to go to a website called Energy Sage. It's a nonprofit, and you put in your information, and they'll do an initial survey online. They don't sell solar panels, but they'll get you a bunch of bids from reputable solar dealers, and then they'll give you can compare the quotes, you can compare the lifetime costs, the quality of the panels, like all the things that are confusing, they sort of standardize that and make it much easier. And I'll also note that the solar panels almost, they save you money. It is expensive up front if you buy them yourself, but if you go through that labyrinth, they will save you money. And then if you do the lease option, you don't have to go through as big a labyrinth, but you won't save as much money, but you will definitely save money. Basically, you're leasing your roof. They sort of sell you the power, but the power will always be less, discounted, from what PSE&G would have charged you for that same power. So again, do it, it saves money. What I'm supposed to be talking about, though, is what happens if you live in an apartment where you've got a tree over your house and you can't have a solar panel. So New Jersey has a relatively new program called Community Solar. So if you want to be living on solar power, but you can't get one on your own home or you don't own a single family home, you can essentially buy into a cooperative solar array where you buy a piece of that solar array. The way it works is a solar developer company gets permitted to build one of these arrays, and then they put it out on the market, and people can subscribe to it. And when you subscribe to it, you essentially bought a piece of it. And so you start to pay the co-op or the solar developer a monthly fee, and then you get a credit off your bill that's more than your monthly fee. That's pretty much it. So you're going to save money, not a lot. I'm saving about $20 off of my bill. There are currently 7 such projects, I think, that are serving Highland Park. If you want to check them out, you can go to sustainablejersey.com, sustainablejersey.com/community solar, or you can just go to your favorite search engine and just type in any combination of those words, community solar, sustainable Jersey, and you'll find the community solar finder. And there's lots of helpful information. It's one of those things where you'll have to go through some bureaucratic pain, but you'll save money and you'll be on solar panel power. You'll have done your bit. Next.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Tina Weishaus. And we recently, maybe 2 months ago, put in heat pump system in a lake house that we own. But we've had a heat pump for air conditioning in our Highland Park home for 11 or 12 years. It didn't kind of compute, and it's kind of silly that I'm the one up here talking about heat pumps, but my husband, who knows all about it, he'll be in the small group. So if you have heat pump questions, go there. So I was nervous all day about pressures, condensers, coils, in, out, whatever. It's not important. What you need to know about heat pumps is that they are healthier, cheaper, more efficient, and greener than heating, cooling systems that use fossil fuels. And that in order to meet any of our climate goals, we have to electrify the building sector, which is, I don't know, what did you say? It's transportation number 1 and building is number 2. Yeah, it's huge. And if everybody in this room put in heat pumps, and everybody all over the place put in heat pumps, it would make a huge impact. And maybe more even than EVs, but we have to electrify our transportation sector as well. So that's why everybody's talking about heat pumps. I think it came up around February 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine, and Europe didn't have the fossil fuels to heat their homes. So there were calls on President Biden to use the Defense Production Act to make heat pumps in this country and send them to Europe. I don't know that we ever did that. It was a great idea, and it is really important to understand what it would mean for people to actually get off of fossil fuels in their home. You can also get a heat pump water heater, and you can go to an induction stove as well. But so it's a big investment. It's a lot of money up front, but like all the other things we're talking about, it saves you money on a monthly basis, and it will come back to you in utility costs, as well as maybe even health costs and life costs. So we used a Mitsubishi, and my husband interviewed a lot of people, and we didn't, so people know, they know the words air handler and mini split. So if you don't burn fossil fuels to generate heat, you can use, I think this technology, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, it's been around for a long time, and there's no, magic in it. It works by moving and redistributing heat from the inside to the outside, or the outside to the inside, depending on whether you want to heat or cool your home. And it's great that it can do both things. So if you have an aging system, we did it because we just, at the lake house, we didn't want to burn oil anymore. No more oil, get off of oil. Actually, we left the oil burner in place because just in case we didn't want the pipes to freeze, because we're not there all the time. You can actually do bigger or smaller systems. You can do rooms. You can do for lower temperature. We used a hyper heat. Is that what it's called? Yes, yes. A hyper heat system, which means that it heats for colder temperatures. So you have a lot of choices in this, and you can start small probably and build. We have 2 compressors because we did 5 rooms. You can do 2 rooms and stick to 1 compressor, but the point is that you really want to stop burning fossil fuels. That's the point. That's the point. If we don't get that point, our futures are really in danger. And there were a lot of people in New York City a few weeks ago saying that end fossil fuels. So this is one way. You don't have to go to New York, but you can start thinking about doing it in your own environment and make that contribution. And it would actually reduce your carbon footprint significantly. So that's my main point. And you can ask the questions about the technology, but I want to repeat it. It's healthier because you're not breathing the toxic chemicals or pollutants that you breathe when fossil fuels are burned in your home. It's cheaper because it actually reduces your monthly, even though you're paying off the upfront cost, it is cheaper as a system. It is more efficient. It doesn't have to generate heat. It is simply moving it from one place to another and putting it through a refrigerant, which then, either cools or heats your home. And it's greener. It does not produce any fossil fuels. And might I say one more time, that's the point. Oh, but I didn't say you can get $2,000, up to $2,000 from the IRA, and you can get money back, rebates from your utility company. Not the state, but the utilities are designing plans depending on what kind of heat pump you get. They will give you more or less money. So you get a few $1,000s off the top. We pay, I'll tell you, we paid, I think we paid about $5,000 a room. So again, you can do as many rooms as you want and, kind of design the system that you can afford but also makes a contribution to reducing your carbon footprint. Why don't you turn now to local, I forgot. Okay, now I'm going to turn to local resilience. Okay, so resiliency is actually, I'm going to give you a definition of it. It's preparing for absorbing the impacts of recovering from and adapting after an event that is, traumatic. It is improving and learning from your experience, but getting through it in recovering and maybe even being in better shape from learning what you did going through it. We must develop climate resilience. We are now facing one extreme event after another. And when we talk about resiliency, we often now are talking about climate resiliency. So resiliency can be hyper-local, meaning it can be at the individual level, or it can be at the local level, or it can be at the home level, which is somewhat how I'm going to talk about it, or it can be global. We can be talking about the species. But as I'm the chairperson of Sustainable Highland Park, we work on local resiliency, things that people can do on their own property or as a community to prepare for, get through, and survive and be on the other side of an event, such as Hurricane Sandy. So resiliency is often spoken about in the town's master plan, and our 2010 master plan did not emphasize it, but come 2012, post-Sandy, the next version of the master plan did incorporate talking about climate resiliency. And I think that everybody was pretty stunned by what happened a few years ago when we experienced Hurricane Ida. And in one day in Highland Park, we got nearly 9 inches of rain. So how do you develop resiliency in the face of these kind of extreme weather events that we're facing? You work at it, and you do all the mitigation and then all the adaptation that you can do. And you still might not, you're still going to get very wet, but hopefully there are things that you can do. So my example of resiliency in Highland Park is to talk about green infrastructure in the face of stormwater runoff. And green infrastructure uses the soil and vegetation, the naturescape, to deal with a lot of water, which we are facing more and more. My children live in Brooklyn, and Brooklyn was a disaster on Friday. That's an example of a lack of resiliency, and I don't know how they're going to fix the subways, but it's a big problem. But here in Highland Park, we are identifying, we're lucky, we're a community that knows about climate change, that acknowledges it, and that is putting into place an action plan. And you can do that in your home, and you can decide, okay, after Hurricane Ida flooded, that was an experience that many people had never had in Highland Park. I'm looking at one, Mickey sitting there. He had never flooded before, but he lost his water heater and I don't know what else went in the basement, and maybe some of you did too. So so there are things that you can do. You can, use sump pumps, you can dig French drains, but in addition, you can do things that fall under the category of green infrastructure. And that would be putting a rain garden on your property, or disconnecting your downspout so that the water doesn't run onto all that impervious surface that we have in Highland Park. About 48% of Highland Park is paved or rooftops, and therefore when water hits pavement, it runs right into the storm drains, and the storm drains are overwhelmed and often can flood. And so we have a program in Highland Park called Adopt a Drain, which is run through Sustainable Highland Park, where people in their communities, they keep their neighborhood drains free of debris and organic waste, and hopefully as many pollutants as possible. This is, and we're also learning about how to go beyond that, how to do things like rain gardens on private property and educate people and teach them that there are natural ways of addressing some of these things, and then maybe some of it is you need more natural ways. But it's definitely something that every community, and then every person, whether you live in a home that you own or you live in an apartment, you need to be thinking now about what to do if I'm faced with an event. And people are doing that. They're beginning to prepare. So I would say, just to wrap up on this, it's a brief example of a complicated area. But I do think that that we have big challenges. The more that people educate themselves and educate themselves in community, so that communities are part of the resiliency solution, that you need to be working with other people and organizing and sharing ideas and solutions, and then taking action in your own local community and then beyond that. So I think that climate change is the challenge of the species, and that we really need to do what we can and not put off. There are things that you may not be able to afford, but there are things that don't cost anything that you can be doing, and taking action with people who are your neighbors and live where you live, and protecting everyone, and is really important, and it will change you as well in a good way. So the challenge turns into an opportunity. Okay, Charles. Oh, Randy.
So confusing, I'll go to Charlie.
Okay, so I'm supposed to talk about what communities can do and what we can do to get our communities to act as a group. So two basic things. It's our municipalities and schools and what they do with their facilities, and what kind of pressure we can put on them to do it. Can everyone hear me? Yes? Okay, great. And then the other thing is what we can do as the leaders in our community to get everyone to do these things that we just talked about. And I just want to say a quick show of hands. How many people here have done all the stuff that we've heard? So you either got solar panels or community solar, you're driving an EV, and you've either got a heat pump or you've done some recent major work to make your home more energy efficient. Show of hands.
All of us?
All three. All three. Okay. We got it. Two. How many have done two? Two of the three. Okay. So you guys are the ones that came out on what is this, a Tuesday? On a Tuesday night, we're all tired. You're like the champions, and you've only, most of you have not done it. So it's hard work. There are people. You mentioned Ukraine. There are people fighting for their homes and their freedom in Ukraine, and there are people who are fighting for food in other parts of the world. And it's hard for us to muster our reserves on a Tuesday night to come out to an event like this. And thank you for doing it. But I think there's things that we can do that we just have to get through, and that we all have to do it. But then we have to think about how do we get everyone in our community to do it, because human beings act in groups. We are, like it or not, social creatures that sort of work together. Sustainable Jersey, which is a great program, has got a number of things that communities can do to support the local government working in partnership with a green team or a group of volunteers or an environmental commission to do outreach campaigns to get people to sign up and to do these things. Education, outreach, and handholding. So I'll mention that a lot of us, people like Charlie, people like Tina, many others, Indivisible, have been working for a long time. In fact, everyone at this table, and probably everyone down there, to get state and federal government to take climate change seriously. Well, guess what? They have. Not as much as we want, but so much. And the IRA bill has created billions and billions of dollars that is flowing down to subsidize these electric vehicles, to subsidize these solar panels, and to subsidize the cost of you to make your home more energy efficient. Now we need, there's only so much that the government can do if the citizens don't want to do it, if the people don't want to do it. There's stuff that people have to do now to sign up for the programs, to get the contractor out, to make your home more efficient. So in Sustainable Jersey and also through PSE&G, there's programs like, we have a partnership with PSE&G because the utilities, through a Clean Energy Act of 2018, were mandated by the state to run clean energy programs. Some of them wanted to do it, some of them didn't want to do it. Now they all have to do it, and now they are the primary implementers of these home energy efficiency programs. So we got PSE&G essentially to fund communities to run the outreach campaigns. So we, Sustainable Jersey, will come to your town, make a video with some local celebrity or the green team chair or the mayor, get them doing the work on their homes, give you the marketing collateral, we'll make a banner for you that you can put over your town, we'll make a website for you, everything that you need to sort of use your name, your good name as the leaders of the town, Highland Park Township, Tuncheon Township, to do the outreach. So as leaders in your community, organizing outreach, doing this yourself, and then doing a video of it so others see it and believe it, and then doing an outreach campaign is really important. And then Sustainable Jersey has the checklist for every city and town in New Jersey that says exactly what they ought to be doing. We sort of prioritize what things they should be doing through, it takes a while to really understand the Sustainable Jersey system, but if you've got an environmental commission or a green team, every couple of years you should be scanning these actions, digging into them and asking yourself, which of these are we going to do? Which of these are we not going to do? The final thing I will say, if there's one thing that, if there's only one thing you can get your municipality to do, it is to sign up for the Community Energy Planning Grant Program. This is a grant by the Board of Public Utilities, the state agency, in partnership with Sustainable Jersey, to, it gives a grant for you to do an energy plan. And it's not like an airy-fairy energy plan. It's absolutely things that fall into the category of you can and should, and there's no real excuse for you not to have done these things. Similar to all of us with all like EVs and solar panels. And it just requires people to sort of get on their towns and make it happen. So there's no more waiting. There's no cavalry charging in. We have to do it. There's a lot of things for us to do. Let's do them.
Keep it going for Randy, everyone. I have a handout, so I'll be right down to hand this to you.
Oh, and then this is our handout too, by the way, that I handed out, which is sort of like an overview of all the things that a local government can do.
Yeah, it's on the table back there where you signed in.
All right, so good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. My name is Charlie Kratovil, the Central Jersey organizer at Food and Water Watch. Those of you who don't know us, we have our New Jersey headquarters in New Brunswick. I want to start by saying thank you so much to Keven and Indivisible, the Reformed Church of Highland Park for hosting this, and for all of you for coming out to learn more about how you can help in this critical fight. Unfortunately, despite our best efforts, there are still some bad ideas that get proposed and floated and occasionally done in our state. So, at Food and Water Watch, our mission is to make sure that everyone has access to clean water and healthy, affordable food. And increasingly, over the recent decade, the biggest threat to those two things has been the climate crisis. It threatens our ability to feed ourselves, to maintain clean drinking water supplies, and then of course is also causing all sorts of other problems that we are now beginning to see more and more frequently and more extreme. So I don't have to belabor the points, but we know about the wildfires that affected our air quality this past summer. We have seen firsthand flooding in Brunswick, in Highland Park, in Woodbridge, and places all over Middlesex County. And we know what's causing it. It is overwhelmingly the burning of fossil fuels. As has been mentioned, the transportation sector is actually the biggest contributor in terms of greenhouse gas emissions every year. And some folks are doing some good things to transition us away from those emissions. But if we are plugging our cars in to a grid that is powered by dirty energy, the same problem will persist for our climate, for our situations with air, flooding, etc. And same goes with building electrification. If you've got that heat pump and you put those, put in the time and energy to get yourself a heat pump, but it's going to derive its energy from dirty fossil fuel power plant, well, as a society, we're going to be in the same place with the same problem. So what's critical is that we transition that number two contributor to greenhouse gases in New Jersey, the electricity generation sector, to clean renewable energy. And there's lots of good proposals for clean energy projects out there. Unfortunately, there's some dirty energy projects proposed for right here in Central Jersey. And so our work at Food and Water Watch has been very laser focused on educating people about these proposals and doing everything we can to get the government to stop them. We're not trying to convince the corporations to not do it. We're targeting, in many cases, our governor. And our governor has certainly talked a lot about the climate crisis. He acknowledges it. He has said a lot of good things about it and set some ambitious goals. And if we don't immediately stop building new fossil fuel infrastructure, we will not achieve any of those goals, and all of that will just be talk. So, as many of you know, there is a proposed new gas power plant for the Casby section of Woodbridge. This is just a few miles away from where we are tonight, and the handout that you're receiving will show you straight from the company that wants to build it what they are proposing in terms of emissions. And I just want to highlight a couple of things. This is straight from their air permit. They're requesting permission to pollute. They need to get a permit from the government in order to operate this gas plant. It would be right next to the first one that they operate. So you see two sets of numbers here, the existing amount of tons of pollution, and then the proposed additional is the first number there. And so the first and most important one is that GHG number, the greenhouse gas emissions. Right now they're permitted to emit 2.2 million tons every single year from the first plant. If they get approval for the second plant, that would be another 2.4, it would be up to 4.6 million tons of greenhouse gases every single year. And that's the stuff that doesn't hurt us to breathe it in, but it hurts our planet, it hurts our climate, it accelerates climate change, it makes it worse, it makes those impacts more extreme on us and every living thing. But many of these pollutants you may recognize as poisons, things you don't want to ever ingest or breathe in, but I want to flag for you the two things that most frequently cause air pollution, and those would be smog and particulate matter. Now, smog is the product of nitrogen oxides and sulfur dioxide. Those are the two ingredients that on those hot summer days actually causes those two things to combine into O3, which is ozone, which is okay when it's high above us, and it's actually important we have an ozone layer high above us, but we don't want to be breathing it. It's called ground level ozone. That is smog, and that is that stuff that makes it hard to breathe and unpleasant to be outside on those hot summer days. And this power plant would emit many, many tons of both of those what are called ozone precursors, the two things that combine to make ground level ozone, make smog. So that's straight from the air permit, what they're proposing there. And then I also want to flag for you particulate matter. And so particulate matter is little tiny particles. It's a big problem with all the cars on the road that are using internal combustion engines, but it's also spewing from all sorts of other major sources of air pollution, including fossil fuel power plants. And so this proposal here would be, we've already got 99 tons of it every year permitted from that first plant. This would be another 100 tons on top of it, basically double the emissions. And particulate matter, those were the particles that were causing us so much grief back in June when we had those horrible wildfire smoke descend upon us, and in an instant we all had to change our plans and stay inside and really fret and worry about people who are already having a difficult time breathing, what that would mean for them. And particulate matter is the kind of thing that, if it's the smallest kind, the kind that's smaller than 2.5 microns, it embeds itself deep inside your lungs. Once you breathe it in, it's small enough that it embeds itself there and stays there for the rest of your life. It makes it harder for you to breathe, makes your life end sooner, and it happens to all of us. Every day we're breathing in particulate matter, so anything we can do to have less of that in our air is a good thing, and anything that's going to bring more of that to our air is a bad thing. So for those reasons alone, myself and many Middlesex County residents have been agitating, organizing, educating, doing everything we can to get our leaders to step up and stop this project. And so there's a number of things that you can do. I'm happy to talk about with you in the groups, but on the flyer there were 3 of them right here that I would ask everybody to do, and that would be to call Governor Murphy during business hours and call this phone number, and you'll be able to speak to a member of the staff. There'll be a little recording of me first, reminding you what to say, but obviously you want to say you're against this project and you want the governor to use his power to stop it. There's also an online petition, the link is there, and we have a great group of activists who have been meeting every other Saturday for almost 2 years now on Zoom, and we encourage you all to join in if you want to learn more and get the latest information about this fight and how we can win. We have made a big part of our campaign to get municipal governments to take a stand against the project, and we've been successful. I'm pleased to report Highland Park was one of the first to do it, and we now have 16 elected governing bodies that have taken a formal stance opposing this project, and more to come. We just had a great showing last night in South Plainfield. We're going to continue to lift this issue up all over the state of New Jersey until we win. So I look forward to working with you on this, and thank you for including me. My phone number and email is on here too, so if we don't get to talk tonight, please do reach out and call. Thank you.
So thank you to all our speakers. We really appreciate taking the time and your excellent comments. What we're going to be doing is then they'll be moving to the tables there, and you can continue an in-depth discussion with them. At several of the tables, we'll also be giving out handouts in these lurid colors, so you can distinguish the various handouts. We have one on electric vehicles, one on solar panels, one on community solar, and one on heat pumps. In addition, you know that there's one on sustainable Jersey, and as Charlie said, there's something that also has been produced by Food and Water Watch. So please pick up these materials. As you notice, we're videotaping this, so that we'll also be putting the videotape of the plenary and the report back from the groups out on YouTube, as well as copies of these handouts. Before we go, besides thanking our speakers, there's one more thanks that I want to give, and that is to Pastor Seth. I was telling him before that it is a remarkable thing what the Reformed Church has done, is to make available this space to the community. We ourselves have made use of it any number of times. This service that the church does to the community, which is one of many services it gives them, is one that we deeply appreciate, and we appreciate his presence here. So please give him the Reformed Church has been an astonishing ally and resource for all of us. So why don't we go to our discussion groups? You can see the signs back there. The little stands are courtesy of our daughter's bat mitzvah. So we decided to put them to use again. Anyway, let me ask you to please move there.